and welcome back to Trista's reading room. Sorry about the delay. We are currently in renovation of our kitchen and things are crazy. The space where I usually record is fully just full of stuff. I literally have to squeeze, I have a walkway to squeeze into that room to get to my recording booth, and that's it. So until that gets sorted out, I'm going to be up here recording. Also planning to have a longer break from Trista's reading room once I get through the books that have been submitted already by authors. It depends on how frequently I can post videos, but it could be up until the end of this year. And then I'm going to take a break and we'll come back. Today we are looking at Penelope Grace and the Winter Carousel by Alexandria Miracola. And this was published November 15th, 2022. In a home nestled on a quiet cobblestone street, a young woman is holding tightly to Wonder. Penelope Grace is looking out the window, breathing in the stillness of snow falling. Christmas is coming, and as she lovingly places each candle on the windowsills, warmth and light transform her family's home. All is quiet and good, as it should be. But as the holiday approaches, Penelope learns how easily circumstances can mock joy. A nameless shadow is haunting her family, and there seems to be no hope of defending them against his relentless attacks. Still, Penelope Grace is not content to stand by and do nothing, and so, on a cold winter's night, she finds herself chasing an unexpected friend through the softly falling snow. But which will prove stronger? Shadow or light? Despair or wonder? Follow her now through an ice-laden forest, down a worn, frozen path, to a winter carousel covered in snow, and we'll enjoy the battle for wonder together. This is book 1 of the Chronicles of Wonder, and it is for ages 7 through 15. There is not much for content warning. The story explores loss and grief during the holidays. There are some fantasy villains and creatures, and fight scenes that are somewhat more intense, but there is nothing graphic. You can find the paperback on her online bookstore, www.2125books.com. Here's a bit about the author. Alexandria Miracola is a Christian fantasy author and owner of 2125 Books, an independent publishing company. She loves stories that draw readers' hearts back to God and remind them that light is always overcoming darkness. Her first novel was Penelope Grace in the Winter Carousel. She is currently off somewhere writing about dragons and brewing a pot of tea. Here's what she says is the inspiration for her book. If you asked me if I had any plans of writing Penelope Grace in the Winter Carousel, I would have told you no. But I never could have anticipated my family's need for this story or my own. 5 years ago, on the darkest December day I will ever know, my Grandpa John passed away. All through the following year, there was an emptiness and an ache that would not go away. Something was missing. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't have told you what it was. Until on a cold night, God broke through the darkness that was suffocating our hearts and home. I opened up an old music box that my grandmother gave me when I was a little girl, and when I heard its melody, I saw a winter carousel turning, and was introduced to the world of Allura for the first time. I hope that no matter what you might be facing or enduring right now, this story meets you there and reignites your sense of wonder in the one who makes all things right and does all things well. You can find Alexandria Miracola on Facebook, Instagram, Goodreads, and on her website. Prologue. Penelope Grace was a remarkable girl. Of course, that word remarkable can mean many different things, depending on whom you ask. Upon entering the Sarah's household, you would first be taken to the kitchen for a warm cup of tea to fight off the early winter's chill. There, Nurse Sasha, who oversaw everything, would happily offer you her opinion. She could hardly find it less than remarkable that a girl of 16 could behave so much like her 19-year-old brother as to be nearly indistinguishable. Once welcomed and enlightened, you might continue to the living room and find a comfortable chair near Penelope's mother, Mary, who is patiently mending the latest torn and dirt-stained dress. She would share with you how her daughter is remarkably and admirably unconcerned with what others think of her. Over the years, her friends marveled to find that Penelope was just as likely to pick up an imaginary sword as an intricate piece of embroidery. Growing serious now, Mary would tell you of the many encouragements she has received to rein her daughter in. But it is too rare a gift to see a child's spirit endure into adulthood. As Penelope's mother, she would ask, how could she do less than safeguard it? But just then young George would come bursting in, his great-uncle Alex not far behind, and insist on knowing what your conversation was about. "Well, George," Mary would ask with the warmest of smiles, "what do you think makes your sister remarkable?" He would think hard about it for a minute or two, but his nose, crinkling up as he grinned, would soon reply with a firm, "Two things." And then, leaning forward as if to share with you a very great secret, George would tell you a story. Just last week, Penelope had, remarkably, succeeded both in assembling an entire regiment of Nutcracker soldiers in the foyer and in vanishing from sight before Nurse Sasha could certainly accuse her of having done it. "And the second?" you would ask, sincerely eager to know.
"She's the only grown-up who isn't only teasing me when she says she still believes in Father Christmas."
Equally impressed by both these reasons, you might then turn to Great-Uncle Alex, whom you would find no less willing to join in the conversation. He would have to say that Penelope was remarkable for her persistent delight in all things simple, yet extraordinary. Even now she remained as enchanted with his magic tricks as she was on the first day he arrived from Greece to share them with her. But of all her family, acquaintances, and friends, only her father John, who has been listening by the crackling fire all the while, could tell you with absolute certainty what it was that made Penelope Grace genuinely remarkable. Wonder. Part 1. Christmas. Often you will find that people long for the warmer months of the year. Perhaps you rejoice in the brilliant blooms of spring and the feeling of the warm sun on your skin. While she would certainly not argue against the beauty of those things, Penelope Grace delighted most in winter. Where some saw harshness and gloom, she saw the thrill of expectation. As the first snow fell, Penelope would rush her family out of doors, exhilarated as she breathed in the stillness God ushered in with the first flakes. She would stand in the middle of their quiet street, face tilted up and eyes closed, listening as he whispered to her about the wonder of what was coming. Hope built in her heart throughout the whole of winter. While many could only see the death of things above, Penelope Grace remembered what was happening out of sight, beneath the frozen ground. The flowers and trees were only preparing to grow again, waiting to burst into new life, and Penelope Grace waited with them. With so much expectation, it was no surprise that as Christmas drew near, Penelope celebrated with more joy than you would believe one human heart capable of holding. Her spirit was contagious, and none left her company without firmly believing that winter was the most wonderful of seasons, and Christmas the holiday to be cherished most. But what of you, reader? Well, let us see if she can convince you. The candles were among the first of the Christmas decorations to arrive, and these, above all, were her favorite. Each year, on the same day in early November, Penelope Grace lovingly placed each one upon the windowsill and the cherry wood mantelpiece. Follow me, and that is where we will find her this evening. George trailed behind her as she moved to the nearest street-facing window, candle in hand. Setting it down, Penelope turned to her brother, a smile lighting up her hazel eyes. "Here, Georgie, you like this one." Beaming with pride that he should be chosen for such a task, he gingerly took the match from Penelope's hand. Carefully now he lit the candle, watching with delight as its small but brilliant light bathed the windowsill in a comforting warm glow.
"Why the candles first, Penelope?"
George asked, his voice soft. She looked out at their quiet cobblestone street for a moment before answering, "Because, Georgie, they remind us of what we're really celebrating, light coming into the world." He smiled, staying with her a moment more before running to join Uncle Alex by the fire. Penelope Grace turned to look at her family. Georgie sat in Uncle Alex's lap, learning to play cards, and her mother and father laughed softly together nearby. She cherished the moment, marveling at the way their home had been transformed by nothing more than a few candles, by warmth and light. It was several weeks later, the 13th of December to be precise, when the evening of the gardener's annual Christmas party arrived. Though Penelope loved holiday parties, the gardener's was an altogether stuffy affair, and she searched for reasons not to attend with great enthusiasm. The atmosphere was stifling, Every decoration was in its proper place, and Penelope always suspected that Mr. and Mrs. Gardner had sacrificed joy for the sake of perfection. She enjoyed attending until, at the age of 14, she made the alarming discovery that her playmates were so determined to grow up that they had forgotten how to have fun. Last year, she had claimed to be much too tired from December's merriment to accompany her parents. But this year, her father knew just what she was up to. Dressed in his most excellent suit, he looked down at her, trying to look stern and failing miserably. "Now, Penelope," he asked with a knowing smile, "what excuse will I give for you this year? The Gardners will be devastated by your absence. They so enjoyed the mock sword fight you incited amongst the children 3 Christmases ago." Penelope laughed, remembering how she and her friend Charlie had been shocked to discover that their Christmas crackers were actually swords. Even more horrifying, the gardener's dog was a terrifying beast, threatening the well-being of the guests. It had been quick work to convince all the children that they must defend the gardener's home. Soon enough, they were charging through the house, to the confusion of everyone present, and the extreme alarm of the gardener's unlucky spaniel. "Do they still talk about that?" she asked in mock innocence. "With great fear of reprisal," her father replied, a mischievous gleam in his eyes. Still laughing, Penelope said, "Oh, Papa, I would much rather keep Uncle Alex and Georgie company." He bent down to kiss her softly on the top of her head. "Then, my dearest Penelope Grace, you are hereby released from all obligation to attend the gardener's Christmas party. And I must admit," he continued quietly, "I'm in full agreement that your Uncle Alex's company will be far more fun." Just then, Penelope felt a soft tug on her hand. She looked down to find Georgie standing beside her, his brown eyes full of hope.
"Penelope, will you be staying home with me?"
She smiled, ruffling his hair fondly as she knelt before him. "Of course I'm staying, Georgie. Where else could I have such fun?" He beamed up at her, his joy spilling over, and then ran down the hall, shouting on his way,
"Oh, tell Uncle Alex! He'll do his magic tricks for us!"
Her father let out a hearty laugh as he and Penelope watched young Georgie slip and slide across the freshly polished floor, in his eagerness to share the news. Mary paused just in time to prevent a collision with her youngest as he charged by, before continuing on her way, graceful as ever in her dark green evening gown. Penelope admired the gown's beautifully embroidered flowers and the small beads that glittered as they caught the candlelight. Her mother looked radiant. "Do look after your brother and uncle, Penelope," Mary said, not at all surprised that her daughter was not accompanying them. "Oh, and try not to run Nurse Sasha out of the house," she continued, a small smile causing her dimples to show. "You underestimate Nurse Sasha, my dear," John chided. "I expect she'll manage." Turning to Penelope, he said, "I also expect to hear reports of an altogether adventurous evening when we return." Laughing, she replied, "We'll do our best, Papa," before following them out onto the front step. She smiled at the familiar sound of her father whistling his favorite tune as he helped her mother into the carriage. Long after they had pulled away, Penelope lingered outside, delighting in the touch of the freshly fallen powdered snow against her bare feet. Their already quiet street was transformed by the shimmering snowflakes, for snow brings a stillness that you cannot encounter at any other time of the year. Penelope could not help but enjoy the sensation for a few breaths. Soon enough, she heard the creak of their door behind her. "Penelope?" Uncle Alex inquired, his voice rich and warm. Seeing her standing in the cold, he smiled, unsurprised. "Oh, yes, my winter princess." Uncle Alex looked up to the sky, admiring the winter night for himself. "Well, follow me, Princess Penelope," he continued, bowing formally. "The young prince is becoming impatient for dinner." They re-entered just as George was running toward the entryway, Nurse Sasha close behind. He stopped just shy of stepping on Penelope's toes.
"We should eat,"
he pronounced with great exuberance. "We should, Georgie, but first we have a crucial decision to make. Papa has told me that we must have an adventurous evening. Do you have any ideas?" Instantly he grinned, and Penelope knew he had thought of just the thing. "Share them with me?" George beckoned Penelope to come close before whispering in her ear. Agreeing that it was a brilliant plan, she in turn shared it with Uncle Alex in hushed tones. The lines around his eyes crinkled as he smiled. Even at 76, he had lost none of his delight for all things mischievous and playful.
Dare I ask what devastating consequences await those who fail to carry out this mission?
Uncle Alex questioned. Another mischievous grin from George.
They must surrender their share of dessert to me. A just punishment,
Uncle Alex replied. With a very grave expression, he bowed to his nephew, and George, fighting a smile, returned the gesture before scampering off to decide how he might best contribute to the mischief. Nurse Sasha, flabbergasted by the lot of them, shuddered to think what shenanigans she might soon be exposed to, and retreated to the kitchen. That's it for today. Keep an eye out for this one. We're going to do a giveaway since I have a paperback. If you would like to read more of the story, check it out on Alexandria's website. And thanks for joining me.